Hey everybody, Heather here. So today we are going to be coloring this adorable saturated canary image called Windy Day. I will put a link down in the description box to the card kit and all the supplies I used on the card. I would love to have you come shopping with me. I have already stamped my image on Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. So let's color. So let's start out by outlining our image with B00, and I'm just going to start down here underneath of her foot, or right here by her ruffle, and I'm just going to go all the way around and add my outline. And you can make it as skinny or as fat as you would like. Up here. And if you do this first, then if you get a little bit on her, you can erase it with your colorless blender if you want. There's a little dab background showing there between her hair. Put a little bit of color on that. And then I also went down this string, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of line there. We're just going to go all the way around. And here's a little bit of space right here. And down, back down to her other shoe. And I'm also going to do this string right here and her kite bows. And I didn't go all the way to the end of the string because I'm going to put some ground for it to look like it's laying on. Next, let's work on our skin, and for that we're going to use E11, E21, E00, E000. For her cheeks, I'm going to use R43, R20, and R30. And I'm going to start with E11, and I'm going to do this arm here. So I'm going to add a little dab underneath of her hair and right next to her body. And then over here, we're going to go above her cleavage, and then again down next to her body. Next, I'm going to grab E21, and I'm going to just dab my brush down on top of my E11, and then lightly flick out here to my white. And then this is E00, and I'm going to go ahead and fill this side in. Not much room left over here. And I'm going to do the same thing for her arm on this side. I'm just going to fill that all the way in. And I always make sure that I go over the entire area, not just the edge. Then we're going to grab up, whoops, I better do her feet down here too. So again, I'm going to start with E11. And I'm going to go down here. We're going to go right next to her shoe, and then up her back of her leg. And then she's got a little bit of an ankle indentation. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then for this side, again, I'm going to go down this side. Maybe come in just a little bit for her ankle right there. I'm going to bring this down to this little bow. Then I'm going to go with E21. And again, I want to touch down on top of my 11 and lightly flick out into my white. And I'm going to bring this around over here to the other side of her shoe. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Just work my way down. The next is E00. fill in this little space here above her ruffle. Go over that line here on her foot just one more time. Blend it a little bit better. And then I'm going to fill those areas in with my E000. And again, I like to brush over the entire part of her foot. And let's go up here and do her face. So I'm going to grab E11 first, and I'm going to add a little bit of shadows. And she's got her eye comes pretty close over here. So I'm going to go right underneath her eyelashes. She has a little bit of space left. And then we're going to go up here, and we're going to come down on the other side of her bangs. And then over here, her eyeball, we don't want to color there. We want to go underneath her cheek. And she's got a little bit of ear showing up here, so I'm going to do a little bit underneath that flower. And actually, there's a little bit of ear showing over here. And let's bring this side down. And I'm going to add a little bit of color underneath of her nose right here. And her neck. Go ahead and color that in. There's not much space there. Next is E21. So I'm going to finish coloring in her ears. And then again, we want to brush this line just a little bit and soften it. Go around her lips. And underneath of her nose. Next is E00. I'm going to go ahead and brush over these ears just a little bit to soften them up. And I'm going to come down around her eye. And I'm going to go over her nose and right next to that hair right there. Then I'm going to take my E000 and go over the entire thing and fill in that little bit of white space and over her nose. And I'm not worried if it's not blended all the way because I'm going to add some cheek color and then I'm going to come back and do a little bit more shading. So I'm going to grab R43 to start my cheek color. And I'm going to brush them right next to the edges. And then next is R20. And then R30, just to soften that edge just a little bit. I think I'll actually take my R43 again and just give a little bit darker cheeks over here. And then R20 just to soften it a little bit. Now I'm going to grab my E00 and I'm going to go over that cheek color. And then my E000 to go over the entire thing. Now let's work on her lips and her eyes. For her lips, I'm going to use R27 and R05. And for her eyes, I'm going to use B99, B97, and B95. So I'm going to start with my lips, which is going to start with R27. And I'm just going to do a little dab on each side, leaving a white space there in the middle. Then I'm going to take R05 to fill that in. Next, I'm going to go with B99, and I'm going to add that up here at the top of her eyes. And if your B99 is like mine, I hardly ever use it. It's pretty wet, so I'm going to take the other end off so I don't make a big old blob onto my paper. Next I'm going to grab B97. And we're going to add a little bit more here. I'm going to bring this side down to that little white dot there that I'm going to leave white. Same for this side. And we'll soften this edge right here a little bit. And then I want to fill it in with my B95. Let's go ahead and work on her hair next, and for that I'm going to use E49, E44, E43, E42, and E41. And I'm going to start with my E44 and add in a little bit of shadows. So let's start on this side of her hair over here. And I'm just going to start at her roots and just work my way across there and add a few little stripes. And then where this flower is, I want to bring a little bit of color up away from that. And then we're going to go down here below her ear. And I'm going to add a little tiny dab of color underneath that. And this little section right here kind of goes down here behind her, right next to her neck. So I'm going to add a little bit in there and pull that up. Okay, and then right here it looks like it's kind of going underneath of her hair, so I'm going to go pull a little bit of my shade away from this little indentation here where it's going underneath. Like that. And then down here where it's pulling out from underneath of her hair, I'm going to add some shadows there. And same for this side. And then it's rolling over right here, so I'm going to add a little dab right there where it's rolling. And same for this little crook right here. And then let's do where it's coming out, where it's kind of twisted. And then right here it's going behind this one. And this one's coming out from behind that side. And this one's twisting back behind. And then this one is coming out from behind. And let's see, here we got this little curly Q. So let's do a little bit up here on top of this curly Q. And then on this side where it's coming back around, and right here where it's coming out from behind. And then we're going to move over to this other side. So for this side, let's do again away from her part. So let me turn my girl a little bit so I can flick a little bit better. And since she's got a little bit more hair going on over here, I'm going to make this side a little bit longer. My streaks. And then let's turn her this way. And over here it's going behind this section, so I'm going to brush away from that. And this end that curls up. And right here it's coming out from underneath. I'm going to brush that little section and the end of this little curl. And let's see, where this curl is wrapping underneath, I'm going to add a little bit in there. And let's do where it's coming out from behind this section. course, down here where her neck is touching her hair, we're going to add some color down here. Wherever you want there to be a shadow. I'm going to come bring this section down a little bit more so it connects in there. Oh, let's see here. So let's do this little curly Q here where it's rolling into back into itself. And grab this little part here where it's coming out from behind this other section. And then I want to do where it's rolling over on these. And did I do this one a little bit? Here's this one kind of comes underneath in this. Let's do right here. Okay, that's pretty good for all those shadows. So now let's go with E43, and we're just going to start doing that again. So I'm going to go add some more color on top of my 44 with my E43. And we want to touch down on our previous color so that we can soften that edge. Right here where it comes all the way and it's tucking behind, I'm going to fill that little section in. And I think I'll bring this section down just a little bit more, like this. And we're just working my way all the way back around and adding some more of that color in there. And I'm going to bring some of this color around on this little curly Q. It's got quite a bit of hair growing here. Makes it fun for coloring. Lots of different swirls and such. Next, I'm going to grab E42, and we're just going to add some more of those colors in. So let's just start on this side again. Some more of this little curly Q, this curly Q, and then around here on the top. Then I want to fill it in with my E41. That little dab of a curly Q there. And if you'd like to leave some white, you just go ahead and do that. I can never get it to look right, so I always just fill mine all the way in. And then after I got it all colored, I went back with my E49 and I just added a little bit of some shadows back in. So like up here at the roots. And a few of these little tails. Maybe a little bit up here above this little flower here. Like so. Since we have the browns out, let's go ahead and work on her belt and some of these ruffles down here. So for that, we're going to use E44, E43, E42, and E41. I'm going to start with my E44 and do her belt first. So I'm going to add a little bit of that color out here on the edge. And then these little wrinkles that are on the belt. Another little dab on this side. Over here. I'm going to go underneath this little wrinkle right here a little bit. And then where it's coming out from underneath of this tied sash part. And then I'm going to bring that color clear down here and over the top of this little wrinkle. And she's also got a little bump in right here, so I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit. And then come down this side. And maybe a tiny dab right along this ruffle. And then I'm going to go with E43. And I just want to soften that edges up just a little bit. So I'm just adding a little bit more color. And then E42. And then E41 to fill it in. And later, after I got it all put together, I went in with my Sharpie white pink pen and added some white dots onto these little flowers that were on that. Then let's go down here and work on some of these stripes, or these ruffles. So again, I'm going to start with E44. And for this ruffle, right here underneath of her dress, I'm going to go right next, with a small line, right next to her dress. And then I'm going to skip this little flowered one, and I'm going to do this section. Then I'm going to go with E43. I'm just going to draw right over the top of that line and widen it out. Same for this one. And then E42. And again, I'm brushing right over the top of that line that was already there. I'm just adding some more color. And then E41 to fill that in. Then I'm going to go down here and do this bottom ruffle part. So again, I've grabbed E44, and I'm going to try to use these the two darkest colors in the parts, in the pleats that are underneath, that look like they're behind. So I'm going to go right along here. just work my way along. Over here, this one kind of comes back up. So let's do like this. And skip that one. I'm going to leave that section for a lighter color. So now let's go with E43. And I want to fill the rest of these back sections or underneath sections in. And then for these little sections that are on top, I'm going to use this color as the shadow underneath this ruffle area. Next I'm going to go with E42. I'm going to brush along that edge of that line. And then down here where the ruffle is in the back of her dress, I want to add a little bit of shadows underneath here. Where she's got that secondary ruffle sticking out from behind. And then I'm going to go over the entire thing with E41. And the bottom of this ruffle down here. For the dress, the ruffles, and the shoes, let's use BG 34, 32, 11, and 10. I'm going to start with my BG 34, and let's go down here and start on her shoe. So she's got this little section of shoe right here that's showing behind this other shoe. I'm going to fill that in. And then over here, I'm going to go next to her foot. That. And for this shoe, let's brush a little bit of color up from each side. And next is BG32. I'm going to cover in this back shoe. This front shoe, we're going to brush a little bit of color on. BG11. And then BG10 to fill in this section here. And I like to go over the entire thing. Even these little sections over here I already did. Then let's go up here to this next ruffle. So I'm going to start with BG34, and like the brown one, we're going to add some shade. So I'm going to do that to these sections that look like they are in the back or underneath. Like this. And then BG32. And this one's got an up ruffle, so I'm going to leave that white there at the top. And I'm going to go in with my BG11. And let's add a little dab of this on the top of each of these cute little pleats. And then we're going to fill it in with our BG10. let's hop up here to this next little section of ruffle. So again, BG34. And as long as I'm coloring, I'm going to go ahead and do this underside of this dress that's showing right here. Since I'm going to color it this color, we'll just fill it in. And next is BG32. BG11. And BG10 to fill that section in. Alright, that leaves us with a pretty dress. So again, we're going to start with BG34. Let's add a little bit of this color along the bottom here and on the top. I'm going to go underneath of her hair a little bit there. Then over here, I'm going to go underneath of her belt and down this side. And she's also got a couple little wrinkles right here, so I'm going to add a little bit of color right on top of that wrinkle. And then where her little belt is, I'm going to come down with some shadow color around to the other side. Next, I'm going to grab BG32. And we're going to add a little bit to her bodice. And then we want to brush a little bit of this color off of our dark into the center. In this little section over here, I'm going to fill that in. And then let's come off this belt. And under here. And then this one is BG11. I think I'll bring this around right here. And then my BG10, I'm going to go over the entire thing. Let's hop up here and do the kite next, and for that I'm going to use R01, R00, and R000. I'm going to start with my R01, and let's add a little bit of color up here at the top, and then I want to go down the inside of the sticks, and then go along the sticks. Same for this side. Let's add a little bit of color up here at the top, and then come down our stick, and fan out away from these corner here a little bit. Here, I'm going to fill that side in. This side we're going to fan a little bit. Then I'm going to go with R00. I'm going to fill that back section in. And then R000 to fill it all the way in. I picked up a little bit of hair color there and colored on my kite. I think I'll darken it up a little bit, so I'm going to take my R01 again and just add a little bit more shadow in here. I'll leave it like that. For the sticks, let's use E23 and E41. So I'm going to start with my E23 and add some color here. Go on each side of the string, or where it looks like it's behind something. and then we'll fill it in with E41. I'm also going to use this color to just go over these strings that are tying the kite and this little tape that's right here on that heart. Let's hop down here and do her shoe soles next. And for that, we're going to use W9, W7, and W5. And I'm going to start with my W9. And if you don't use your pen very much, remember to remove the other end of the cap so that it won't spill all over your work. W7. And W5 to fill it in. Next, let's do the flower, the heart, and the bow, the little bows on the kite string. And for that, we're going to use R59, R27, and R05. I'm going to start down here with R29 on my kite bows. Add a little dab of color on the bottom of my knot. And then coming away from the center of the knot. Same for this side, or this one. Let's do inside. That. And then up here for the flower, as long as I got it out and there's not much room, I'm just going to use this color to go over some of these squiggles. Like that. Then I'm going to grab R27. Add a little bit more color to my bows. And then my flower. I'm just going to go right over the top of those squiggles and squiggle around a little bit more. And then for my heart over here, I want to add some of this color on this side. I'm going to color this half of my heart this darker red. Next, I'm going to go with R05, and I'm going to fill in my hearts, or my bows down here. And then the flower in her hair. And my little heart. Let's hop down here and give her something to stand on. And for that, we're going to use W3, W1, and W00. I'm going to start with my W00, and I'm just going to give me a base for her to stand on. And this side, kind of bring it out. Try to bring it out about the even. But I also want to go over here so it goes under all this string so it has something to sit on. Okay, then I'm going to grab W3. And we're just going to flick away from her shoes. And since the soles of her shoes are black, we don't have to be too worried about that. I'm going to bring a little bit of this over here underneath of this string. Then I'm going to grab W1. And I'm going to soften that edge. And then we'll go over it again with our W00. And then I'd like to go back with my W3, my darkest color, and just add a little bit more of this dark back in. That leaves us with this cute little leaf up here, and for that we're going to use G94 and G43. And first I'm going to start with my G94. I'm going to go right next to my flower and her hair, and then I'm going to go down this little stem. Then I'm going to go over that whole thing with my G43. I think I'll put my shadow back in a little bit, so I'm going to grab G94 again. And just add a little bit of shadow and go down that seam again. There is our beautifully colored Windy Day. Didn't she turn out fabulous? And then again, here is the finished card. And for the finished card, I put some Stickle Stardust in clear on her hair. Or not Stickle Stardust, some Spica glitter pen in clear on her hair. And then I added some Sharpie white paint pen to this cute little belt she's got here, to these little bows on the kite string. And I put a little dot on her lip, just to give it a little shiny spot. And then for my Stickle Stardust, I added that to her little flower and this little heart on the kite. And then I also used some Distress inks this time. So I used some let me turn my paper over so I can see what I used. I used some Gathered Twigs on this sentiment right here, and then I used antique linen around the outside of my image, and some black soot on this little piece of blue paper, because the paper was colored on one side, so I needed the other side I wanted it to match, so I added some on there. And then I also added some Gathered Twigs out here on this tan colored paper, because again it was colored on one side a little bit darker, and I wanted it to even out. But that is our beautiful Windy Day card kit. If you had fun coloring with me today, could you please hit the like button? And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that so you can get an update to all my videos. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.